When grief becomes so overwhelming that your mind refuses to let go, something terrible can happen. You might create something that looks like your child, sounds like your child, but is definitely not your child. And once it's alive, you can't control it. I'm Carol Ann. Welcome to the InBetween. I have to issue a warning at the very top of this one. This episode starts out on a very sad note, and then just gets even darker after that. However, it is also exactly the kind of story I had in mind when I started this channel. Creepy as all get out. So put on your big boy and big girl pants and hold on tight, because this journey takes us on a roller coaster ride through the crazy depths of the human mind. We start in the early 80s, somewhere around Dallas. Travis and Olivia Mabel are like the perfect couple. They get married, have their son Aiden in 1983, and within a couple of years decide to leave behind the burb life in favor of a place called Footlights Ranch, a 13-acre spread in Salina, Texas, population a whopping 3,000 or so people, about an hour north of Dallas. Footlights Ranch is a beautiful piece of land that sits in quiet contrast to the city, with wide fields, a little pond, and lots of woods. In short, a little boy's dream. That place felt like their own world, ideal for raising Aiden and maybe adding more kids down the line. But for now, Aiden is their pride and joy, especially for Olivia, who dotes on him constantly. Travis works hard to keep things going, while Olivia handles the home front and is very active in the community and their church. Life is about as good as it gets. Fast forward to March 13th, 1990. It's a normal afternoon when 7-year-old Aiden asks Olivia if he can play outside. She says yes, like usual, telling him to stay close and be back for supper. He takes off with a whoop, excited for another adventure. Hours pass, which is not a huge deal. Aiden would spend hours exploring those woods. But by 5:30 p.m., dinner's getting cold and Aiden's still not home yet. As the evening light is fading, Travis and Olivia grab flashlights and head out to look for him, calling his name as they scour the property. Until they reach the pond. Olivia's world comes crashing down around her as she sees her little boy face down in the pond. No foul play, just a tragic accident, confirmed by responders and noted on his death certificate as death by misadventure. The community showers the Mabels with support, but for the Mabels, it's like the world has just stopped. That pond, once a fun spot, now haunts them. They bury their son, but guilt and grief hit hard. For Olivia, it was like a dark cloud taking over. She goes from cheerful and social to a shell of herself, skipping church, dodging friends, and shutting out family. Work? Not a chance. She barely left the house. Travis tried to hold on, but the weight was too much. By early 1991, they divorced, and he moved east for a fresh start. Olivia stayed behind at the ranch, alone on those 13 acres. A neighbor caught a glimpse of her around September of 1991, looking worn out, but after that, she vanished from sight. Calls go unanswered, letters ignored, doors stay locked. Groceries come via delivery, but the place looks abandoned. Windows whitewashed, doors swollen shut. Jump to February 27th, 1994. Out of the blue, Salina police get 3 silent 911 calls. Just dead air, then hang-ups. Tracing the calls to Footlights Ranch, they send a patrol car. The place is sealed tight. Doors jammed, windows blocked. Officers bust in and step straight into the past. There's dust covering everything. Cobwebs hang like a horror movie set, and rooms look ransacked but untouched for years. They go through the whole house, room by room. Same story. Until they get to what used to be Aiden's bedroom. This room is spotless. No dust, clothes neatly folded, toys lined up like he'll be back any minute to play with them again. In the middle of the room, on a rocking chair, sits Olivia's decomposing body in a nightgown and slippers, kind of looking like she's been gone a few months already. In her hands is a weird stick figure doll wrapped in a piece of fabric that turns out to be from one of Aiden's shirts. In front of her is a makeshift altar, a big trunk covered with a kid's bedsheet, loaded with Aiden's photos, his baseball glove, his shoes, candles, an urn of ashes, and fresh flowers. Across the front are yellow pieces of paper with characters written on them. Characters that turn out to be Sanskrit, translating to mean to construct or to build. Letters to Aiden, drawings of his little cherub face, and random notes are scattered over the top. One stands out. My Aiden, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have never let it get like this. I'm leaving. I will not let you keep me, you vile, evil creature. Mommy's coming for you, Aiden, my sweet Aiden. Mommy loves you. Dated that very day, February 27th, 1994. Officer Francesca Santiago is the first officer on the scene. She happens to have a bit of a family history and things of a less than normal nature. So she keys in right away on the heavy, angry feeling that the house exudes. There are no signs of a break-in, except the door that they broke down to get in. Everything is locked inside and covered with a perfect, thick layer of dust, including the phone. So who called 911? Not that many people had cell phones in 1994. And how is the note dated that very day? And how are there fresh flowers on the altar? Who else was in that house? Well, maybe the question isn't who, but what. Maybe doing nothing but dwelling in the grief of her dead son for literally years created a tulpa. And better yet, judging by the Sanskrit characters printed on the altar, to construct or to build, it looks like that's exactly what her intention was. Tulpas come from old Tibetan Buddhist traditions that are centuries old. They're basically entities you create with your imagination's full force. You focus hard on something, like a mythical beast, or for Olivia, her son, and it starts to feel real. Not flesh and blood, but alive in its own way, thriving on the belief of its creator. It's like a supercharged version of your imaginary friend you had when you were little. Skeptical? Fair enough. Scientists and psychologists might call it a hallucination or even a mental break. But the idea of tulpas is not new, and lots of people have tried it. Take Richard Freeman, a cryptozoologist and ex-zookeeper in England. In the 90s, inspired by Clark Ashton Smith's spider god, Atlash Nacha, he decided to make it a tulpa. He roped friends and roommates in and built an altar in the basement, and they hung a web-painted cloth on the wall. And for weeks, they chanted and visualized. A month later, Freeman goes downstairs alone and freezes. A huge spider shadow is crawling along the wall, legs and body clear. Not solid yet, but close. Richard sneaks back upstairs before the shadow finds out he's there and slams the door behind him. He tells everybody about the tulpa shadow. Everybody panics and they run downstairs and tear it all down and do their very best to stop thinking about it. And that must have worked because they never saw it again. Imagine the landlord's face if they'd kept it. Then there's Alan Moore, the man behind the legendary comics Watchmen and V for Vendetta. In the 80s, he co-created John Constantine, the chain-smoking occult trickster. Spending so much time fixated on the creation of fictional beings, Alan might have accidentally made a tulpa. Soon after launching the character, he's eating at an outdoor cafe in London when John Constantine walks by, the exact version that Alan has in his head. Constantine gives Alan a knowing nod, and then vanishes around the corner. Alan's too freaked out to get up and follow it, but he never sees it again. John Keel tells a story in his book, The Mothman Prophecies, about a house in Greenwich Village that had been a happy place. But when it was sold in the 70s, the new owners kept catching glimpses of a dark figure wearing a big black hat and a cape. Interesting. Even more so when you learn that the former owner was one Walter Gibson, the famous magician. Walter was the creator of The Shadow, a big black hat and cape wearing mystical vigilante that was the subject of countless pulp magazine novellas, radio programs, and even movies in the 1930s. Gibson cranked out monthly shadow novellas, 282 of them, 60 to 80 pages each, in that house. I think it's fair to say that he was always thinking of the shadow. Once Walter left, his creation evidently stayed behind. That brings us to the most well-known tulpa of all time, Slender Man. Slender Man didn't start out as a tulpa. He started as just a creepy image created by Eric Knudsen in June of 2009 for a Photoshop contest on a forum for the Something Awful website. But then it exploded. Who knows why, but in a veritable instant, that picture was worldwide. Everyone was thinking about that figure, which is exactly how tulpas are born. And for a lot of people, Slender Man became very real. So much, though, that in 2014, 2 middle school girls stabbed their friend because they believed Slender Man demanded a sacrifice for them to get into his mansion. Thankfully, their friend survived. But tulpamancy, the practice of intentionally creating a sentient, independent tulpa, or thought form as they're also known, is alive and well. Everyone just wants to create their perfect companion. But be careful what you wish for. Even with the best intentions, your tulpa can go rogue. Just ask Alexandra David Nail. Who? I'd never heard of her either, but as soon as you look at her history, you find out that she's one of those women like Rose from the Titanic after she was rescued. That makes the rest of us women think, why isn't my life like that? Born in France in 1868, Alexandra joined Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society when she was only 18 and converted to Buddhism at 21. She was an anarchist, an opera singer, and wrote 30 books. She clocked in 18,000 miles of hiking all through the Far East, and she was one of the first Western women to enter Lhasa, Tibet's forbidden capital, in 1924. In her book, Magic and Mystery in Tibet, she talks about how, while she was studying at the Kumbum Monastery from around 1918 to 1921, she created her own tulpa, a jolly, portly friar, kind of like Friar Tuck. Over months of visualization, the good friar gained autonomy, becoming visible to her companions and supposedly interacting independently of her, taking on a life of his own. But over time, he changed from the cheerful character Alexandra created to something more malevolent and threatening. It took her 6 months to dissolve him. Which brings us back to Olivia. She had the altar, the doll, the Sanskrit writings meaning to build or construct. Sure sounds like she was trying to bring him back in some way, shape, or form. In her deep isolation, she might have tried some version of tulpamancy, pouring her grief into remaking Aiden. Buddhist teachings say focused will can birth spirits. Her letters suggest it worked. And then things went south. Maybe the negative energy of her heartbreak created a negative energy entity that broke loose and turned against her. Maybe it killed her and made those calls to bring people to the house because it was running out of energy. But whatever happened in that house happened to Olivia months prior. But who made the 911 calls without touching the phone? Who wrote the note dated the same day? And who put fresh flowers on the altar? But whatever was in that house with Olivia didn't go away. Ownership of the house eventually changed hands to a man named Christopher Hagen. Despite he himself hearing odd noises, feeling cold spots, and having things move around the house on him, he cleaned it out, fixed it up, and then tried selling it. For years. with no takers. Potential buyers would walk in the house and feel a heavy oppression and nope their way right out again. In 2005, Mr. Hagen contacts a guy named Drew Navarro, a paranormal investigator with lots of experience. Navarro goes through the house and feels what he describes as an imposing force. He finds it hard to breathe, and he can feel the energy in the house shifting around like a kid throwing a temper tantrum, very unpredictable, and with a feeling of possessiveness like, this is my house. Navarro's final advice? I don't know what this thing is, but I would avoid this place. It needs some serious help. Maybe the would-be Aiden tulpa is still there. Even though what Olivia created is not really Aiden, if tulpamancy works like they say it does, then Olivia's fixation on her son would probably infuse the tulpa with every emotion, expression, quirk, like, dislike, and memory that she could think of. Maybe that entity, who may even believe it is Aiden, is just trying to guard the only home he's ever known, a place that made him so happy with the tenacity and fierceness of an angry 7-year-old boy. Now, as awesome as this story is, it is not without its red fake flags. And as much as I hate to admit it, there are quite a few. While we have a death certificate and a police report for Aiden's death, we do not have a police report, autopsy report, or death certificate for Olivia. And while absence of proof is not proof of absence, circumstantially speaking, that's not a good start. Also, there's no local media coverage of the event. Salina, Texas was only about 3,000 people at the time, so you would think that something like this happening in their little community would have made the news somewhere. Next, there are some suspicious ties to an LA production company named Elftree Media. Apparently, members of the company heard the story and wrote a script around it called Thought Form. In 2016, they started a Kickstarter campaign to fund the production of the movie. Sadly, they did not raise the funds needed and the movie was never produced. But skeptics point out that nothing was ever heard about this case until just before that Kickstarter campaign was launched, meaning this whole thing could very well be a clever marketing campaign to get their movie funded. There is a website, oliviamabel.com, that is currently the place to go to see everything related to the case. And there is actually a voicemail from Joe Morales at Elftree Media asking for more information.
Hi, my name is Joe. I am on a show called Hi There, and I live out in Los Angeles. Wrote a story with some friends based on your website. Anyway, if you have any more information, could you shoot us an email at us@entertheelftree.com. That would be freaking rad. Thanks again. Hope you're doing well.
Could be real, or it could be a nice touch of realism to the story. The identity of the owners of the website is private, which is really common. And the phone number to call if you have any information that is posted on the site is not to any law enforcement agency, but just a generic, untraceable Google number. Also on the site are a couple more sound clips. There's this one.
Look, she was out of her mind. That's all you need to know, okay? The boy is dead. Simple as that. Just stop digging.
I have no idea what the context is here. Obviously, it sounds like someone close to the investigation who just wants this whole thing to be over. But it's just so random, and in my opinion, it sounds fake. But then there's this audio.
O.J. Simpson's initial reaction.
Miss Mabel's son, Aiden Mabel, died on the property in 1990 from a drowning incident. The documents and writings found at the scene were written in an unidentified language and are currently being analyzed.
Let's go.
Miss Mabel was discovered deceased inside one of the rooms. Her body was found upright in a rocking chair, plus in a figure made of sticks and leaves. Judging from initial reports, Miss Mabel had been dead a matter of months. That is honestly all we know at this point. If you have any information, please do not hesitate to contact us.
This is interesting to me. In my humble opinion, the one character that all actors fail to play well is reporters and press conference speakers. Without fail, they overact the part and sound super fake. But this one actually sounds real to me. However, and this is a big one, that press conference clip is attributed to Sergeant Terry Goldshire, supposedly the lead investigator on the case. But there are no records of this guy existing outside of this story. The same goes for Officer Francesca Santiago, the first person on the scene at the house, and for Drew Navarro, the paranormal investigator who labeled the house as a problem. None of them seem to exist. Now, that being said, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that none of these people and the missing records don't show up anywhere because A, it's a small town, and B, they don't want the hassle that would be associated with publishing the information. As far as the production company ties go, maybe they just found a really good, real, creepy story and wanted to make a movie around it. That is possible. But even if we do discount this entire event as fiction, that doesn't mean tulpas aren't real. We talked earlier about the experience of Alexandra David Nail. Apparently, she has witnesses to the existence of her Friar Tuck tulpa. But if that's not enough, maybe this will change your mind. In 1972, a group called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research conducted an interesting and well-documented experiment. They, in essence, created a fictional person named Philip Aylesford, a knight from the 17th century England. They spent a lot of time creating an entire lifelong backstory for this guy, and even had an artist's rendering created of his face. The guy was as real to them as could be. The experiment part was to see if they could now conjure this fictional character into existence. And they did! It took the better part of a year of seance-like gatherings, but they eventually manifested something that could move the table they were using, knock on demand,
louder,
and even appear as a misty, moving blob above their heads. Their results were reportedly duplicated by many such groups to varying degrees of success all around the world. And keep in mind that the group was not a bunch of loonies predisposed to see ghosts around every corner. It included professionals from all walks of life. Now, the Toronto group was trying to figure out whether or not ghosts were real or a manifestation of the minds of those involved. Like a poltergeist is often attributed to a particular, usually adolescent person somehow manifesting strange events around them. They were trying to conjure a ghost, not a tulpa. But what's the difference? In this experiment, the process is exactly the same. Create a character, focus on the character, and the character will eventually gain enough energy to come to life, so to speak. So, if this story is real, I am certainly not going to throw shade on Olivia for doing whatever she could think of to get her son back. I have one child, and if anything were to happen to him, I might just get on the phone to Stephen King asking him to tell me where the pet cemetery is. Anything to bring him back. But as this cautionary tale, real or fiction, teaches us, is that the power of our minds is greater than we know. Our thoughts can become real, either internally or even externally. So never has a truer statement been spoken than, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. As the mother of a single son, this one really hit home for me. I can't and don't want to imagine the level of grief. Maybe it's better to just leave this one in the fiction category, just so that I put no more of my own thought energy in that direction. But if you are not yet done with your journey through the dusty, untraveled corners of this weird existence, click right here. And maybe bring an extra pair of underwear, just in case. Be careful out there, and I will see you here again on the In-Between.